The views and opinions expressed in this podcast by the host and or the guest do not necessarily reflect the views of the host and or Paranormal Buzz Radio and or its sponsors. Use of any material produced by Paranormal Buzz Radio without express written consent is prohibited. Paranormal Buzz Radio will not be held responsible for you holding your knees, crying, and rocking in a corner in a puddle of your own urine, or being beheaded by a group of children in a cornfield. In fact, if you come across a group of children in a cornfield, we promise to make fun of you as you run away screaming in terror. Listener discretion is advised.
Caution. You are now entering the all-consuming realm of Shay's Paranormal Chat, where the things that are better left unsaid are actually said.
Shut up and sit down.
You're listening to Shay's Paranormal Chat. Paranormal podcasting done Shay's way. Tons of fun.
Dude, seriously?
A bit sarcastic.
Hashtag investigator, not hunter.
But always real.
Hashtag data, not evidence.
Don't get your panties in a twist.
Oh my god, really?
This is real, raw conversation. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Hey everybody, TGIF. How's everybody doing? I hope everybody's holding up pretty good. I know we're all going through a lot right now. Before I introduce tonight's guest and co-host, I just want to remind everybody that you're not alone. We're all going through this together, and I want everybody to try to keep a positive attitude and try to keep their spirits high and hang in there. We're all, going through it, and we're going to try to make it to the other side positively. And I know there's a lot of sadness going on right now, and so I want to get back to throwing out some helpline numbers. If you are upset, depressed, need somebody to talk to, the suicide prevention line is 1-800-273-TALK, 1-800-273-8255, or you can always text home to 741-741. We all need a little help sometimes, so if you need help, reach out to somebody. Reach out to a loved one. Reach out to me. Reach out to the hotline, because we have a lot going on in the world right now. Without further ado, I want to introduce my special guest co-host, Mr. Darren Buss.
Hey everybody, welcome to chat. Thank you, Shay, for having me on.
Oh, thank you for helping me out tonight. I really appreciate it.
Anytime.
Oh, thank you. And so tonight we're going to be talking about hypnotherapy, past life regression, and all kinds of fun stuff with Steve Burgess. How you doing?
Hi Shay. Hi Darren. Nice to be with you.
Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
Welcome to the craziness.
It's the same over here in the UK.
Right?
Yep.
I just I want everybody to try to stay positive, so that's why I gave out those numbers. I know some people are having a hard time right now, so.
Yeah, a lot of chaos.
A lot of chaos.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yep. So I'm going to do a quick few shout-outs here to the first people in chat. And the first ones in chat tonight are Christopher, Rebecca, Holly, Mama Deb, Angie. Scrolling as quick as we can. Matt's in there. Darren's in there.
I'll respond when I can.
Yes. Darren's going to find out how it is to be in the hot seat with people throwing questions at you when you're live on air. So, good luck, Darren. All right.
Yeah.
All right, Steve. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself before we get into things?
Yes, absolutely. I've been a hypnotherapist for over 28 years and completed over 15,000 therapy sessions in that time. I work in the UK and live a lot of the time in Norway nowadays. I've published 2 books on past life regression. I specialise in regression, and I'm a passionate advocate of the importance of past life regression as a therapy process. And I've seen so many incredible healings over the years by allowing my clients to go into past lives. So I published 2 books on it, and I'm very happy to talk about it.
We're happy to have you here to talk about it.
Yeah, something new for the topic here on Shay's Paranormal Chat. So throw out your questions and, let's see what we can get out of this, right?
Yep, of course. Steve, how did you get into this? What got you interested?
I became a hypnotherapist by accident. My father was playing with hypnotherapy as a result of stopping smoking using hypnotherapy. My father's a scientist, and he tried everything to stop smoking. Nothing had worked, and eventually he went to see a hypnotherapist who laid him down in a chair, got him to relax, gave him hypnotic suggestions to stop smoking, and my father didn't want cigarettes anymore. And he was amazed. He just couldn't understand this. It didn't connect with his scientific left brain model of the world. So he started to read about hypnosis and hypnotherapy. He got interested in it. He got so interested he then trained in it, and he started to see clients at home privately. And I was at a stage soon after that where I needed to change career. So he said, "Why don't you become a hypnotherapist?" I went and trained, and it was just something that fitted me like a glove. And then I just became a standard hypnotherapist. I didn't train in past lives. I knew about reincarnation. I'd been a practicing Buddhist for a number of years and had studied reincarnation for a long time, but I didn't use it as a therapy until one day a young man came to me in his 20s suffering from a massive anxiety state. And he sat in front of me and he was shaking and hyperventilating his words. He was stammering. And he just said, I can't do anything. I sit at home all day shaking. I'm just totally anxious all the time. I don't know what's caused it. I can't work anymore. I've tried tablets. Nothing is working, and you're my last hope. Okay, so I thought, well, this is going to be a fairly standard anxiety case. So, of course, I just relaxed him, took him into trance, and he relaxed very nicely. He stopped shaking. His breathing started to slow down. And I asked his subconscious then just to help us with the problem. And all of a sudden, it started to happen in that he started to shake. His whole body was shaking. His head was moving from side to side, and he started to talk out loud, and he started to shout out, "No, no, 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 be quiet, be quiet, be quiet." And then he was whispering, "Hide the children, hide them in here, hide them, don't let them find us, hide them." And this went on for a few seconds. And of course, I'm sitting there thinking, what is this? What's going on here? This isn't in the script. And he was quiet and shaking, and all of a sudden he started to scream at the top of his voice, "No, no, no, the children, not in here, hide the children, no, not the children." And he was screaming and screaming, and suddenly he just went, complete silence. He just lay in the chair, totally calm, completely calm. I wasn't completely calm.
Oh, I'm sure.
It was a heck of a shock. I wondered what on earth was going on. And so I said to him, I said, "How do you feel?" He said, "I feel wonderful. I just feel wonderful." He said, "I've never felt this calm. All the anxiety's gone. All the panic's gone." So I said, "Well, what were you experiencing there?" He said, "Well, I was a man and my children were with me and soldiers were trying to find us and we were hiding from soldiers. And then they found us and they shot us all and we all died." He said, "What was that?" I said, "Well, I think you've been in a past lifetime." And that was the start of my past life experiences with clients. He had spontaneously regressed.
Wow.
And he got completely better from an anxiety state that he'd had for years. And it was completely cured in 10 minutes. And I sat there and thought, why don't I know about this? This is important. So I started to get information from an American Past Life Association, started to work with it more, and I've developed a system now that I use regression therapy with so many clients into this life or past lives, and it's so effective, it's quite extraordinary, and it heals from such a wide range of problems.
Why do you think it heals? Like the past life in that first case you just talked about, is it kind of like when you face your fears, or is it reliving it and accepting it, acknowledging it, and putting it to rest?
It's both of those and a little bit more, Shay.
Okay.
It is releasing the emotional trauma that has caused the problem in the first place.
Okay.
So the regression model is that all of our problems are caused by locked-in emotions from the past. And these are emotions that get locked in inside us when we are traumatized in this life, in previous lives, also in our ancestors' lives as well. And all of this stuff is locked in the subconscious, and the subconscious is just reacting it in different ways all day long. It's like a pressure cooker, an emotional pressure cooker. And we take the lid off the pressure cooker, the pressure leaves the pressure cooker, and there's just space in there. And that space is healing and calmness. So usually it is about releasing emotional trauma. Sometimes people get an understanding from a past life, and that makes sense of the problem in this lifetime. It may be, I may have a client, for example, who has problems with a mother, who has issues with her mother. And there's a likelihood that in a previous life, they have been together in some way, and they have had a difficult time in a previous life. It may be she's killed the mother in a past life, or the mother has killed my client in the past life. And when they become aware of that understanding helps to heal the problem. So those are the main two ways in which the regression works.
I think that was a great explanation.
Thank you.
Yeah. I just have a quick question. Now, when someone has a past life, how many past lives can that one person have? Is it just one past life per person, or can they have multiple past lives, or just they're different people in each one?
Yeah, in a way, there's maybe two questions there, Darren. One question is how many past lives can cause a problem, and for some clients, it can be several past lives. So quite often, it's usually between 1 and 7. More often than not, there are 3 past lives. It's unusual for there to be more than 10. Very unusual, but occasionally it is the case. And the second answer to the question, of course, how many lives do we live? Well, it appears we live many, many, many lifetimes. Tibetan Buddhism says that we live countless lives over countless aeons of existence, which is a heck of a lot. But my experience is I think we live, most of us, thousands of lifetimes. And that's lifetimes also on other planets as well, not just in human form. We can be reborn on other planets in a different energy form.
So although you can be an animal too as well, right?
Also, yeah, occasionally, it's a good question, Darren, because occasionally we do get animal past lives in therapy. It's not very often. It does appear that once we've achieved a human form, then we stay with that form over many lifetimes. But certainly I had one client who was a camel in a past life. She was disgusted by the smell of all the other camels in the place where she was living. I had a client who was a rabbit in a past life. That was a pretty boring therapy session because all she did was hop around. So we occasionally get animals, but not very often.
That's very interesting, very interesting. I mean, I was told 10 years ago I went to a Paracon, and I came across a psychic, and she was telling me that I had a past life. Mm-hmm. I'm like, really? And she's like, yeah. It's like you were in the medieval times, and how you died is you got stabbed in the back. So I'm like, wow, well, that's interesting, because that's now I know why when I run up the stairs, I get the feeling someone's coming after me from behind.
Oh, really? Interesting. Mm-hmm. And I tell you what, sometimes the stabbing in the back in a past life often connects to a person in this life having what I call a betrayal issue, which is where they have a thing about people betraying them. And they're often very bothered about that. It can be quite a big thing for them. And I'm just thinking about one client. She had very bad psoriasis because skin problems are usually caused by locked-in anger. Doesn't matter what the skin problem is, whether it's eczema, psoriasis, whatever. And she'd certainly been stabbed in the back in several past lives by people who she trusted. One, she was in Egypt, and she was stabbed by, she thought she was quite high up and safe, but people came for her and stabbed her in the back. And it was also a theme in this lifetime, in work as well. She was quite a high business executive. And she'd been toppled from, she was actually she used to be a newspaper editor, and she was toppled from the job by people stabbing her in the back. So it's like a theme that follows from life to life. Mm-hmm. And of course, the good thing is by releasing it now in this life, it gets rid of it forever. So she doesn't have to, in her future lives, suffer from betrayal issues or people stabbing in the back.
Interesting.
I always mess this word up. So I don't even know. I did a show yesterday, and I went to repeat it after the woman said it to me, and I still messed it up. Holly's asking me to ask you about Akashic records.
Akashic records. The Akashic
I think it's a math thing. I can't.
It's a weird name, isn't it? Weird word, yeah.
Yeah, I can't. What do you think? Do you believe in them? What do you think of them?
Well, I mean, I don't disbelieve or believe. I mean, in my terms as a therapist, I don't particularly use any techniques to get clients to open up what are called the Akashic records. There is this idea that everything that we've ever experienced over every lifetime is in a record somewhere, almost like it's been written down in these massive great filing cabinets. I do know that some hypnotherapists would, if they're using regression, would get the client to visualize when they're in trance, going into a room or a big hall with all the records in filing cabinets, and they get drawn to a particular filing cabinet and they open it out and they look through the files, and then they go into the file and they go into a past life. It's not a technique that I use, but certainly a lot of people talk about it very seriously. And I think Edgar Casey did actually, didn't he? And, he tended to be fairly knowledgeable about these things. For me, I don't tend to look at it too much because it's a question for me of just getting the client into the causes of the problem, releasing the problem, and then letting them get better. But I know some people are very, very much into the Akashic records and the concept of that as being a reality. I'm not sure. I'm really not sure.
I'm not either. I have some friends that are really into it, but I personally just started learning about them within the past 6 months. So it's definitely interesting, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I love learning new stuff, though.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we have another question from Deb. Deja vu. What do you think of that? How does that relate with past lives, if at all?
Yes, sometimes it does. Sometimes what is happening in a deja vu experience, you think it's already happened before, and sometimes it has. Sometimes it will connect back to a past life. If I can tell you sort of a story that maybe connects to that, is a client who she called me one day, a lady, to say that something strange has happened. I was at work last week, and a man in the office who I get on very well with, he passed me a file, and I touched his hand. We touched hands, and immediately I got an image of a woman in a long flowing dress with long hair in an old room, and I felt very frustrated. And she said, "What? I don't know what's going on." She said, "I can't get rid of this memory. I can't get rid of this picture. It's not a memory. I can't get rid of it. It's with me all the time, and I'm feeling frustrated all the time." So I said, "Could be past life." And in fact, it was. The touch of the man's hand had triggered a previous lifetime. So for me, that's a sort of a deja vu experience, in that it's triggered something, a memory of a previous life. And so she came to me for sessions, and we opened up that particular picture that was in her mind. And she saw herself as a very beautiful lady waiting in an old wood-panelled room for a man. And she was so frustrated because she was in love with him. And eventually he turns up in the room, and they hug and kiss, and they're very passionately in love. And that was basically triggered by a touch. So that to me is a sort of a deja vu touch experience, if you like, that triggered a past life. What was more extraordinary is that she went into another scene in the past life, and she found that she was a member of royalty. She was actually, and we did a lot of work on this, she appeared to have been Queen Elizabeth I. And we call her, she was obviously the great English queen in the 1500s. So we did lots of work on this, and the man that she was in love with was actually the man that called Robert Dudley. He was the Earl of Leicester, who was in love with Queen Elizabeth. And she actually had this very passionate love affair with him. And all of this came out in the sessions. So I actually wrote about that in my first book, which is called Famous Past Lives, where I've actually seen a few clients who appear to have been very famous in previous lives. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen. It's
I've
weird.
heard about a few, and you never know how to take it.
That's the thing.
I didn't believe in past lives. I never even really thought about it much until, about 10 years ago or so. Never gave it much thought. I was raised a Catholic.
Uh-huh.
And, but then, I started thinking about it, and more. I just always brushed over it until I started seeing more and more news articles about young children coming out with these World War II stories and describing where they lived and what they did and who they knew. And it's like, there's no way little kids will know that much information. You're talking little kids, so then it made me get more and more intrigued.
Yeah, and there's a great American Professor Ian Stevenson, he was at an American university, I think Virginia, I'm not totally sure, and he studied, especially in the East, in India and countries around there, stories of children who claimed to have been, who came up with past life stories. And he actually went over there and he interviewed the families and he interviewed the children, and in some cases the child was saying, let's say a 6-year-old child was saying, well, in my previous life, I was murdered by my brother and we were in business together. And my brother's name was, let's say, Rick. Not an Indian name, but my brother's name was Rick. And the child would give a lot of information about this. And he'd say, well, I was living in Mumbai when this happened. So Ian Stevenson would take the child and the family to Mumbai and do some research and then find exactly what the child had said was completely true. They would find the brother who had murdered him and things like that, or well, maybe not the brother who had murdered him because maybe 100 years ago, but they would. In one case, they actually found the body of a murder victim, and the child gave details of where he was buried. So when that type of information comes through, it's very difficult to sort of think it's all imagination or made up. And Ian Stevenson did some great work on that, but.
I think he did one of the ones where the little 6.5, 7-year-old boy, maybe 8, somewhere around there, said he was from a village somewhere. And they said, well, the village doesn't even exist. We looked it up. That's because it no longer exists. But it did at the time he was talking about.
Brilliant. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, so, children often remember these things. My youngest son, he said, I remember he was, I think, 2.5 to 3.5, and he said to his mom, he said, but you were not my mummy before I came here. I had a different mummy before I came here. And he didn't remember any more than that. But of course, children do sometimes remember these things. As they get older, the memories tend to drift off and they lose them.
I know in paranormal they say they think it's because if they see spirits or anything, it's because society kind of puts a thought in their head not to think about it, not to remember. Do you think that can be the case?
Yeah, very much so.
It's not acceptable sometimes.
Yeah.
I was kind of wondering, with all the cases that you've had, and what's one of the worst thing about a past life that you've come across during your cases, over your 15,000 cases?
Yeah. Most of the therapy that we do is to release death trauma. And so it's so often, I would think that so many therapy sessions are caused, so many problems are caused by traumatic deaths. And so what we're often doing is releasing a horrible death. And I mean, you name it, my clients have been butchered in so many hideous, disgusting ways. There's no wonder they've got a problem because of the horrors of what they've suffered in a death trauma. They're very lucky if they die quickly. And that can still be trauma. I've had a lot of people in wartime who get blown up and shot and die very quickly. But then there are other people who were butchered and tortured and have to go through masses of torture. Got a client in Trondheim at the moment in Norway, and in one of her past lives, this was in the Second World War, she was a Jewess who was tortured by the Nazis. So she stood up them. And what they did is they'd strapped her down and they would torture her. She was also pregnant, so they cut the baby out and killed the baby in front of her. And you can imagine the brutality of that was horrific. Now, of course, when I talk like this, some people get very shocked because they say, "Well, that must be terrible for the client. That's a terrible thing. Why would they want to remember that?" Actually, the subconscious protects them. If they're not able to take it, they don't see it. It's like when we do regression on a child. I regress children from 7 upwards, and they can experience past lives, but they don't go into the traumas like an adult will because they're not ready for it. So the subconscious protects them. So it's a nice thing in a way that even though it's a horrible thing, the subconscious knows that the client is able to take this, and it's not going to make them worse.
Right, because if your subconscious is blocking something, you're showing outer effects somewhere else.
Yes, perfectly. That's absolutely the case. Yes, that's absolutely the case. Yeah. Yep. So we got to get to the cause of it. I call it cause and effect therapy. A client comes in with dog phobia, terrified of dogs. That's the effect. What's caused it? You don't catch a phobia by sitting next to somebody on the bus who's frightened of dogs. It's caused by something. And so I had a client who remembered when she was 2 in this life and she was bitten by a dog. She'd forgotten about that, but in the trance session, she remembered it. And she released the trauma, released the emotion, and then she was quite happy with dogs after that. Aww. So it's cause and effect. That's basically what we're doing. Yeah.
I love
and just going back to your question again, Darren, actually one of the worst deaths that I've ever had was on myself in a past life.
Wow.
I don't see my past lives. I actually feel them and I get a sense of them. And I had been on a 13-day shamanic retreat over here in the UK, which was an enclosed retreat where you were only allowed to do this retreat once in your life because it really does move you on in a big way and get rid of a lot of your stuff. And that's the technical word I use, emotional stuff. And I came off the retreat and I was very angry for a week. I had a lot of anger. And I suddenly realized basically the retreat hadn't cleared my stuff. It had brought something to the surface, but it was not released. So I took myself into trance. And then I went back into a past life where I was hung, drawn and quartered. And if you know anything about English history in the sort of 1600s, they were very much into torturing people, and what they would do to kill you, and they would make this last for hours sometimes, is they'd hang you until you were nearly dead in front of a crowd, cut you down, and then in front of the crowd they would open you up. They call it quartering. They'd open your guts up, pull your stump, start pulling your guts out.
While you're still alive.
While you're still alive.
Yeah.
And making you suffer as much as possible. And I experienced this, and it was. I do a lot of regression on my own because I'm so experienced at it, of course. I wouldn't want my clients to do this, but it was a horrible death, and it was made worse by the fact that somebody watching had betrayed me And it was a man who happened to be my wife at the time in this life. So my wife in this life had betrayed me in the past life. She was a man, and she'd caused me to die so horribly. And that was part of the trauma, actually. It was probably worse than having my guts taken out, I think.
Right.
So it wasn't fun. But I always say I always go further than I've taken all my clients. So, just to make sure it's all safe and effective.
Do you think that happens a lot? People meet up from past lives?
All the time.
So a lot of people use the word soulmate, but I know you're a professional. I don't want to, but they meet at somehow reoccurring. Yeah,
soulmates, there can be different types of soulmates, but it appears that we live in what we call clusters of souls or groups of souls. So within a group of souls, there are some souls, let's say, that are closer to the center. If we're right in the center of a whole group of souls, which are all clustering together, if we're in the center, the ones that are closest to us in that center are the people who will reappear life after life with us in significant roles like parents, lovers, etc., etc. And the people who are on the outside of the clusters are people who will just in small ways and not have very significant roles. And so we do appear to live many lifetimes around each other. And I found many relationships problems actually come from past lifetimes. And if a couple, a husband and wife or partners are having problems in the relationship, there is a possibility that there's some past life stuff which is surfacing and which needs to be released, which needs working on. If you can work on it, release it, then the relationship starts to come back together again.
That makes sense.
And so, so a lot of the time, we can actually heal relationships with this stuff, which is quite remarkable.
It is.
And you're talking back about, the worst death and all that stuff. Now, with these people that, perform these acts on others in their past lives, do you think that in this life, is that what they translate to be like criminals or killers in this life?
Sometimes. It can sometimes be that it's almost like an energy that is coming through. It may be over several lifetimes. I mean, we've got to remember, if we have lived many, many lives, thousands of lives, then this is a long-term thing. And so we've all killed, we've been killed, we've raped, we've been raped, we've loved, we've been loved, we've been everything over many lifetimes. So some people say, well, what if I do a past life and I find out that I was a Nazi and I was horrible? Well, that's part of your learning, really. And the subconscious, again, won't show you that past life unless you are ready for it. But we don't get many past lives therapy sessions where a person is the aggressor. Usually it's where we are victims. But it can be that a theme or a pattern over many lifetimes is that you are an aggressor over several lifetimes. And that's, in a way, that's something you've got to get out your system over the lifetimes. It may actually be that you are actually being aggressor so that somebody else who is your victim can learn something. So sometimes it's not always about our own karma. It's about helping somebody else with their karma.
It almost sounds like you're talking about soul contracts. Am I kind of? Maybe?
A lot of that, I think so, and I think a lot of that goes on, especially with the souls that are close to us. And if we can be aware of that, I mean, I know there are some therapists who will take a client into the spirit world, into spirit before we are born. So we'll regress back in this life. We'll go all the way back through childhood, back through the time of birth, back through the time in the womb, back into the spirit to a time where we're looking at the life we're about to live in, about the life we're going to come into now, and we can get a sense of what we need to learn. That can make life a bit easier to get through as well, if we know that there are some sticky patches and we're learning through those sticky patches. And we all have sticky patches, of course, in life at some time. But that knowledge, that awareness can make it easier for us to get through.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Excellent response.
I was just told my mic was really low, and that's because I have a house full of people that we're all confined to the house. So I turned it up a little. I hope you guys can hear me better. Sorry about that.
Yeah, you sound good.
Okay.
You sound good.
Thank you.
Anybody got questions in chat?
Lots of comments. They're sharing their stories in there. I'm looking for questions. While I look for questions, you want to throw out your new book and where they can find it, Steve?
I'm very happy to share. Thank you. Yes, the book is called The Power of Past Life Regression. The Power of Past Life Regression, and it's by 6 books. It's available as an ebook. It's available as a paperback. All the outlets will be selling it, Amazon, etc., etc. In fact, I've just got my first 5-star review on Amazon today for the book. So it's available in all places or anywhere you can buy good books, basically, and online. I do have a free YouTube channel as well, which contains 17 free hypnotherapy recordings, and that's called Hypno for All, which is HYPNO, Hypno number 4 ALL, Hypno for All. I'm a great passionate advocate about the importance of hypnotherapy, how it can help people to heal. And of course, not everybody can afford to see a therapist privately. And also some people are a bit unsure about it. If they can experience some hypnotherapy for free, then it hopefully will mean that not only are they healing, but also they're more able to understand how important hypnotherapy is as a healing process. So I've put out these free hypnotherapy recordings, and I just love people to go on there and listen to them and get something out of them. So that's Hypno for All.
Now,
and if people want to look at me, it's... Sorry, go on, Shay.
I'm sorry about that. If somebody... Because obviously we can't come overseas to see you. But if somebody wanted to do this, what criteria, what should they look for when they're seeking a good hypnotherapist?
Well, it's a good question, a very good question, because you do have to be careful. You know, you've got to work with somebody, you're working with a mind, you've got to be able to trust that person, you've got to know that they're experienced. I do Skype sessions, and I do Skype sessions with people all around the world. I much prefer to do a one-to-one session in the room with a client, because it's a fantastic experience, and there's a lot of magic goes on in those sessions. But Skype, it does work very, very well on Skype. But if you're looking for a local therapist, I always say talk to them. Just give them a call. Look them up on the internet. Give them a call and get a feel of them. And what you'll find is you get a wide range of therapists with a whole lot of different approaches. And you've got to find the one that's right for you. So how experienced are they? And do they sound professional? Do they sound as if they're just sort of doing it from a kitchen somewhere, or have they got an office? Where have they trained? How long have they been practicing for? Do they do past life regression? Because past life regression is a very important therapy, and some therapists don't treat it seriously. So they may say, well, I'd sort of do it, we'll see what happens. But if you're interested in past lives, you want to see a therapist who knows what they're doing and who believes in the process, as I do, having seen it so many thousands of times before. And use intuition, use gut sense. If the person you're talking to doesn't feel right, just say thank you, I'll get back to you, and put the phone down. But always talk to them. Don't just look at it online, because you can be fooled. People can look very nice and professional, and the words that they use on a website can be very good, but you've got to know that they know what they're doing.
Eye-to-eye contact too. See how they act when they talk to you. Do some body language, you know.
Of course.
Have you ever gotten somebody where you couldn't get them out of hypnosis?
No.
Okay.
No. In fact, the chances of that happening are very, 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 very remote. And I've done 15,000 sessions. I've never come anywhere near that. There is a possibility, let's say in a past life, that somebody could go so deeply in the past life that they just sort of lose this lifetime for a while. That's never happened to me, but we can always bring them back. But I always put safeguards in so that the client is always connected to my voice, and they will respond to my voice throughout the session. And then there's no problem in terms of losing them for a while. I think there was an old past life therapist in the 60s who wrote a book, Jeffrey Iverson, and he had somebody who was in Nelson's Navy in a past life below decks on one of these old warships, and they went into battle, and suddenly a cannonball smashed through the side of the ship and took this man's leg off in the past life. And in this life, the man was screaming and yelling and screaming and yelling and writhing. And the therapist couldn't get him back because he'd let him go too deep. And it took a hell of a job for him to get back, I think. He did get him back eventually. But that's never happened to me. I think in those days they were still experimenting with past lives. Nowadays, therapists like myself, we've got a good system and it works very well. So it's very safe, very safe.
I was told. Sorry, Darren, I'll let you.
No, go ahead.
Ask. All right. I was told for years and years. I have have. I guess it never goes away, but as a young child, I had severe PTSD. And I was told to never be hypnotized. Is that because they didn't know much about it then?
Yes. Yeah, very much so. Because it can really help with PTSD in a big way. So I've had a lot of clients over the years with PTSD, and as long as you do it safely and use the safeguards, then it is very, very effective. Yeah. Although having said that, with PTSD, to be honest, I do prefer to use EFT, the tapping process, because that also works very well.
What is that?
EFT, it's called emotional freedom technique, and it's where you tap on different points on the body to get rid of problems. Some people call it psychological acupuncture because you're using acupuncture points and you're tapping on them while you tune into the problems. And that can work very well with PTSD. So I remember one client who came with, it was an ex-soldier, a bit like your Vietnam vets, of course, who was still suffering from, in fact, the creator of EFT, Gary Craig, went into a Vietnam vets institution for a week and worked with quite a lot of the veterans who were being severely traumatized and still suffering from trauma. Got incredible results using EFT, helping them in a big, big way, and was completely ignored by the medics and the psychologists and psychiatrists in the hospital. Even though he'd done such fantastic work, they didn't want to know. But EFT is wonderful for working with post-traumatic stress disorder. It really is. But hypnotherapy can help, regression can help. I've certainly had clients over the years with PTSD. It's often past life. It can be, of course, childhood trauma, but it's a question of releasing it and getting the person better.
Yeah. I was just wondering, what's one of your favorite cases that you had and greatest accomplishment that you had to overcome?
Gosh, there's so many. I mean, the book is full of the stories. I've absolutely crammed the book full with the client stories, what happened in the past lives, how they were when they first came. I had one client, let me just share with you, he's called Colin, and he had several past lives. He had an anger issue, really bad anger issue, and he was married to a counsellor, a talking therapist, and they loved each other to bits, but he would just fly off the handle sometimes for no reason, and it was obviously going to spoil the marriage if they didn't do anything about it. And he had several past lives. The first past life, he was killed by the Romans, and he was supposed to be guarding his village, and he wasn't concentrating. He was a young man, about 20 years old in the past life. He wasn't concentrating. The Romans came in, killed everybody. So, of course, he was angry with himself that he'd let everybody down. He felt very, very guilty. So that was the first past life. Second past life, he was fighting in the colonial wars in America in the 1700s. He was a French soldier, and the French were being helped by some Native Americans to attack a British fort. But what happens is they attacked the fort and got captured, and then he was hung And so he had to go through the death experience of that. But what was worse for him is that earlier on in the life, he was a soldier and he killed somebody who he shouldn't have killed. He killed a husband and wife, and he felt a lot of remorse for that. So again, he was angry with himself for doing this and very guilty. So the anger was coming through from the past lives. As we were working through these past lives, the anger's getting easier and easier. He started to become much lighter in himself. He died in the Second World War in a bomber, fighting for the British. But of course, he felt responsible for the rest of the crew because he was the pilot. So he felt a lot of guilt. So the guilt was playing around inside him. Later on in another life, he was a Japanese warlord whose wife was killed, and so he went to war with the people that killed her. And he smashed the other people's army with his troops, but he felt guilty that he'd not protected his wife. So again, there's guilt, there's anger, and this is all churning around in his subconscious, and it's pouring back into himself. In another life, he was... Oh, that's right. He was a young man whose father threw him and his sister out. His sister got pregnant to one of his father's friends. And the anger was massive, absolutely massive against his father in that lifetime. So these are sort of the type of stories we hear in past life therapy. And we released all the past lives and the anger just completely dissolved away. And he just got better. So that's one. I mean, I had many clients, but clients with phobias, with anxieties, physical problems. They're classic past life problems. So many times we have a physical injury or a physical illness, and that will come from previous lifetimes. Addictions. One of my greatest successes with a lady who came she was a functional alcoholic, which means that she could work all day, but when she got home, she started drinking, and she was just drunk every night. And this had been the case for 16 years. And she was sent to me by her friend, who said, this man may be able to help you. And this lady said, I don't want to see this hypnotherapist. What a load of rubbish. That's all mumbo-jumbo. That's not going to help me. And she came to see me to prove to her friend that I couldn't help her. That was why she came. And so I took her into trance. In the first session, she went into a past life. She cried. She released a lot of emotion. And she immediately stopped drinking. And she's never touched a drop of alcohol since. She got her life back. In one session, we got a complete cure of alcoholism. That doesn't happen very often. I wish it happened the first session every time.
Right.
But it was just remarkable how she just got her life back.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, very awesome.
We have a bunch of questions in chat here, and we're already coming up on the hour, so I'm going to try to get through.
Fire away.
You might have to have a part two.
I was going to say, I would love to have you back, because this went by really quick.
Yeah, thank you. I'd love to come back.
Yeah, I would love to have you back.
Stuff.
All right, Debbie wants to know. Sorry, Deb. That's my mother. Deb wants to know, how do you tell a true regression from cryptomnesia?
Really good question. It is always possible for people to imagine or make up a past life, either because they've seen something on a TV or they've read a book with some information in it, and that is always possible. What I'm looking for is the intensity of the experience, the intensity of the regression experience for the client. And provided it's a fairly intense experience, then the chances are it is very real. Having said that, and this isn't a cop-out, but it is just the fact that if a client gets better, in a way it doesn't matter if it's real or not.
Amen.
So, from that perspective, it could just be a metaphor that the subconscious has created to get the person better. But usually, going on from that, if a person is fantasizing the past life, there is a different quality to that experience. And I've done so many thousands of sessions, I can tell within seconds whether it's a real past life.
Does it
or
seem more
a fantasy
3D?
one.
That's maybe not the right word, but more
full intense is the sort of the word. Yeah, it's a deeper experience for them.
Yeah.
And it all fits in. People don't say, well, I'm in the middle of 16th century Italy. Oh, there's some motorbikes coming around the corner now in the street. That doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Because if people were making things up, you would get more extraordinary things happening. Doesn't happen in the real regressions. It's all makes sense and it all fits in. It's all congruent is the word I use.
Yeah.
That's a great question from your mum. Your mum's clever. That's a good question.
My mother is very, very clever. She's laying there back on the couch behind me dying, but she's listening.
Oh, dear.
Not really dying. I shouldn't say that, but
no.
having a fit. All right.
She's recovering.
She's something. I don't know. She's trying to recover. How about that? She's going to kill me after the show. That's all right. She's stuck here for another month. It's not like she can leave.
Oh, great.
Holly has a good question. What are your views on soul retrieval?
My experience with soul retrieval is that it can be done as a hypnotherapy process. So usually soul retrieval is a shamanic experience. It's a shamanic process where the shaman goes to different places in order to retrieve parts of a person's soul or personality that have split off as a result of trauma. The shaman brings them back. We can actually do it as a hypnotherapy process. There's a good friend of mine in the UK who specialises as a hypnotherapist in doing soul retrieval sessions. It doesn't matter whether it's real or not. It's a real experience to the client. And so I've trained in soul retrieval. It's not something I use very much, but occasionally I do it to help clients who have lost parts of themselves and need to be and have become quite fragmented. It helps them to be grounded again and to become more whole. WHOLE, of course, whole.
Yeah.
So yeah, soul retrieval is a great process.
Let me make sure I'm trying not to go too fast that I skip anything here. Sorry. The chat's moving really quick. Let's see.
I got one last question whenever you're ready to.
Go ahead, ask yours. Ask your last question so I can make sure I found.
Okay. So the last question I have is that, so when you pass on from this life, what do you want to come back as and what do you want to be doing?
Me personally?
Yes, you personally.
Personally, I don't want to come back.
Amen. I'm with you.
It's flipping hassle down here. Actually, it's if I may go into something that's, I'm just looking at myself now, and this is a bit deeper, and may shock people because I've been working within reincarnation for so many years, but I am now questioning whether we need to reincarnate at all. And I've started to see there are occasional books or articles from people who are saying, basically, do we need to reincarnate? We are perfect as we are. We are perfect light beings in every way. Why on earth do we need to reincarnate to learn something? Because we already know everything. And when you sort of think in those terms, it may be that that's the case. And there are people who say that when we die, we are being pushed back on Earth in order to reincarnate, in order to continue the suffering that goes on down here. So this is a much bigger picture, and I'm not sure about this. I'm at an early stage in looking at this now. It doesn't change the work I'm doing because we've all got emotional baggage,
right,
and it needs to be healed. But I'm starting to look at this and think, okay, maybe we don't need to come back. And so therefore, for me as a soul, what I'm aiming to do when I die is actually to be able to calmly move over. And then wherever I go in spirit is to say, well, I'm in control of this now, as opposed to being pushed down here again. So that's my thoughts. Having said all that, if you were to ask me if I had to come back, I would be a lute player. I love the sound of the lute. I would be a lutenist.
Awesome.
That's a great answer, though.
A bit different.
I hope my daughter doesn't listen to this. She'll be like, what is that? I need to learn to play it. Oh, she will. All right, we have a few more questions here. I know I said only an hour. Guys, by the way, it is like 2 a.m. for Steve, so I'm going to try to get through these questions as quick as possible here. They're awesome questions, so I don't want to miss them.
Like I said, interactive chat.
Yep. Have you ever, this is from Holly Mullins. Love you, Holly. Have you ever had someone you couldn't get under hypnosis?
Oh, yeah, very occasionally. First of all, we don't go under hypnosis, we go into hypnosis.
I misread it. Sorry.
Yeah, okay. So we go into hypnosis. Hypnosis is natural. It's a completely natural state. We all go into trance many times each day. But some people, not many people, they find it difficult to get in. And so occasionally, probably once every 4 years, I get somebody who cannot be hypnotized. They just either they won't let it happen or they're very left brain. But I would say we can all be hypnotized. But for some people, occasionally it's not too easy. And they maybe need to practice a little bit more before they do a regression session.
Is it kind of
Hopefully
like
that answers the question.
They have to open themselves up? Maybe they're not allowing it? Is that what you said? Sorry, I was reading.
That's okay. To be honest, it's usually a man. It's usually males. I'm sorry to say, most women are very open and allow things to happen. Men, unfortunately, most men are controllers, and some men are just archetypal controllers. They will not let go. And with that type of person, then, the chances are it isn't going to happen.
Yep. Okay. I can see that.
I don't have a lot of time for men. The way that we've screwed the world up and the way we screw women up, I've seen so many women who have come to me with problems as a result of men and relationships that you tend to lose. At times, I'm ashamed to be a man. I'm sorry to say.
Well, yeah, but I think sometimes women make up for it. Then we can't always be that great either. But I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
All right. Miss Rebecca Williamson wants to know, can you remember past lives on your own? Like maybe in dreams? Or is it just hypnosis?
No, you can. Good question. Very good question. Yes, you can. Dreams are very often past lives experiences. And sometimes just by giving yourself a bit of quiet time and imagining you going back into the past, you can actually access a past life. It's usually best done with a therapist, of course, just to be safe. But yeah, and sometimes they come through quite spontaneously. Sometimes something can trigger them. You can read a book about something and all of a sudden you think, gosh, that triggers me. I remember something about that. So yeah, we could, all of these, it doesn't need to be in therapy that you go back into past lives.
I have one more question. Hold on. I'm getting there.
She finds it faster than I do.
Well, I have to go up and down. I have to go back. I have to scroll all the way back up to the top to see what people are saying, and then I have to go back down and find the question. All right. You kind of touched up based on this a little bit, but John wants to know, have you ever had someone make something up? And if so, how did you know they made it up? You want to just touch base on that again real quick?
Yeah, for me, there's a different quality in the session. What happens is that the regression becomes more like a fantasy, and it becomes less real. It's much less real than an actual past life memory. And once you've done a few regression sessions, you get to sense what is going on, and you can just spot them. It's just a different quality to the experience. So that I don't think I can sort of classify it as anything specific. It's almost like it's a hunch you have, a gut feeling almost as well, based on experience. This doesn't feel right, but there's often a fantasy-like element that creeps into the past life, and then you start to think, no, this isn't real. Yep. You can also ask the subconscious. You can ask the subconscious if it's real. I use a technique where the client's subconscious says yes or no to me by using a finger or a hand. And sometimes you can say, is this a real past life? And it may say no. Okay, it's come through for a reason. Well, we go with it. But it actually may not be real.
All right. Let's see. I think we're going to...
We're going to have a part 2.
Yeah, we're going to have part 2. So,
it's a big subject.
it is.
It's a
I
big
loved
subject.
it, though. I loved it.
It's very interesting. A lot of stuff that I had no idea about. Learned a lot from this experience here.
And it's a deep subject. You know, a lot of people dismiss it, or they'll take the mickey out of it. You know, they say it's not real. It's a very deep subject. And if people could sit in my office day after day and see what I see, they would know this is very real. Mm-hmm. If it wasn't real, why do thousands of people come to me over the years, and the subconscious takes them into a past life to get them better from depression or anxiety or phobias or a lack of confidence or asthma or migraines? Yep. Why does the subconscious take them there? Why do they do that? If it wasn't real, it doesn't make sense. And most people they haven't got a clue about reincarnation. Haven't got a clue. They just want to get better. They're as shocked as anybody else is when they end up in a past life. So, you know, it's so real and so important. But it is a deep subject. And, of course, I've got millions of stories.
I'm going to have you back. That's for sure, because I love this stuff. Yeah. You want to throw out your social media, Steve? I'd
love to. Yeah. So my website is lionheart-training.com. So that's Lionheart, as in Richard the Lionheart-training.com. I have a WordPress site, which is hypnoblogpod.wordpress.com. hypnoblogpod.wordpress.com. And as I said, the free YouTube channel, Hypno for All. That's the number 4. And my book, Power of Past Life Regression, is available everywhere, also through the website as well.
I've read a little bit that was sent to me, and it's a great read. I definitely want to read it. So
yeah, we're just recording it as an audiobook now as well. So,
awesome. See that?
I'll have to get the audio one.
Yeah. I can listen while I do dishes and mop the floor. That's what I listen the best. All right, I'm gonna give out a few shout outs here, and if I miss you, I'm sorry. Kelly McCarville is usually the one who does the shout outs at the end because the list is so long. I always miss people. If I miss you, I'm sorry. If you're listening later, thank you. I really appreciate it, as always. Let's see, we have Christopher, we have J. Ron, we have Matt, we have Rebecca, we have Miss Holly Mullins in the house.
Cynthia
was in there. I know. I go in order. I tried to.
I just ran by hand.
Yeah, I try to. I'm bad at this. That's why I do it in the beginning. Hey, Stephen Weeks is in the house too. Hey, Stephen. I said hi earlier.
Hey, Steve.
So I do it in the beginning and the end because I miss so many in between. John, one of the new hosts on PBR, was in the house tonight. Thanks for coming. Darren was there. Chris was there.
I was partying.
Mama.
I was too engulfed.
I know, me too. It's hard. Mama Deb's in there.
I think Matt was in there in the beginning.
Matt's in there. Shout out to Matt, who has to deal with me all the time. Allison, another host. She joined us. Thank you, Allison. And I don't want to keep repeating names, but I don't want to miss anybody. All right.
Shay was in there.
I was in here, yeah. I did. For me, I did pretty good. I was so intent on listening to every word you had to say, Steve, and I still managed to keep up with Chad a little bit.
That's impressive.
Way better than I did.
Yeah. You guys, let me tell you, you guys want to make sure you get your shout-outs in. You got to be there within the first 5 minutes of the show. Well, first couple minutes of the show, and you'll definitely get a shout-out. I did my best, guys. Thank you, Darren. Darren, awesome job.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This was an awesome experience, and learning all this new other side of hypnotherapists and stuff like that. And I cannot speak, but it's just a fascinating subject.
It was. So. It was. I can't wait for part 2. This was great.
Yeah, me either.
Yep. So, Steve, thank you so much. It was an honor to have you on tonight.
It's been a real pleasure, my privilege. It really has been wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. I do appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank
you for being here. All right, guys. Until next week. Don't forget, my new show is on Sunday with Rebecca. Exploring the Unknown. It's 20 to 30 minutes long, and it's a bit of funny, bit of paranormal. It's more entertainment news than paranormal, but you'll get a kick out of it. And Paranormal Buzz Radio has a new show starting tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Eastern, 8 Central, and it's about cryptids. So, it's the Cryptid Files with John and Cindy starting tomorrow night, so you don't want to miss that.
Awesome deal.
Thank you, Steven. Steven's saying nice words in there about me. Thank you. I needed that. All right, guys, good night, and be safe, be kind, love one another. Right?
Don't touch your face so much.
Don't touch your face so much, but be positive. That's my whole thing, especially on social media. Cut out the negativity. Be positive. All right, guys. Good night. Till next week.
Good night, guys.